Hello, my name is Nancy Young, and welcome to another episode of Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, a program highlighting the positive voices within our local communities and how they're impacting and uplifting our world, one person at a time. Now, before we get started, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Today, we'll be highlighting your voice through that of financial literacy, not only for adults, but also for you. My guest today is Miss Melanie Perry. She is the CEO of Zeallionaire Enterprises. At this time, help me welcome Melanie.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be on.
Okay, so Melanie, you're with Zeallionaire Enterprises, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You're the CEO of that company.
Yes.
So today we're talking about financial literacy, but also really just not only for adults, but even starting back to youth and
Mm-hmm.
trying to help educate early on so that a lot of people don't get into the mistakes later on in life. So let's talk about your passion for financial literacy. How did that all begin for you?
Well, actually, I guess when I went to college, my degree is in quantitative economics, and I just had an interest in business. Or I could actually take it back a little further in high school. I had a side hustle where I sold candy, on the DL. And, I had an interest in entrepreneurship and business. Then I went to college, got a degree in quantitative economics. And then when I got into the industry as a financial advisor, I noticed that there was a huge gap in the material that I was provided to educate people about money and the folks I was talking to about money. So when I'm going through the PowerPoint presentations, I'm like, I have to talk in between the slides to help provide context to what the slide is about before I could get into the context of the slide. And as I continued, doing workshops and seminars, I had many parents say, "Well, do you have anything for the kids?" And I was like, "Well, I'm teaching you to teach the kids." And as time progressed, I had the opportunity to teach a class at Marcus Garvey School here in Los Angeles, and I proposed to do a curriculum for seventh and eighth graders. And she's like, "That's great, but I want you to start with the babies, starting with kindergarten." And I said, "Okay." I'm having trouble teaching adults about intangible things like stocks and bonds, and you want me to teach babies? She's like, "You can do it." And so I did. And, it was, I know that those kids taught me as much as I taught them. It is, it was a delight, and I still do it to this day for that particular first, experience, to see how much the kids already know and to understand the context that they're coming from, which is from their parents, if they're overhearing from their parents, but then to, incorporate, just to fine tune and to put the right context into understanding the importance of saving and why to save and how to save, and, getting their feedback and their perspective, and, just seeing them go from when I first introduced the course, I was like, what are some things you can do with money? And they all said, "Spend it," in unison. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right. Well, what else can you do with money?" And it was like crickets. And that was in the beginning because I did a little introduction to get an understanding of where the kids were, so I could make sure my curriculum was on point. At the end of 8 weeks, with a 2-week Christmas break, I said, "What can you do with money?" They all said, "Invest it, save it," and the last thing they said was "spend it." So in just a 6 or 8 week time frame with a 2-week gap in between, their whole entire paradigm was shifted. And that led to an even a second phase of my passion of empowering people that look like me and women about money, because number one, if a child knows how to spend the money, then they know how to save. They can learn how to save and invest it. And then to be able to educate parents in a way to articulate the information to their kids, because a lot of parents are like, they don't know, they don't understand. Yeah, they do. And yes, they can. It's just you got to talk to them on their level.
Yeah, I
So
think
those are a couple of things I do.
that's really great because many people today still they feel like that's all money is for is spend it. Because well, how much can you
Right. I
spend
earned it.
today?
I'm gonna spend it.
Yeah, or it was given to me and I'm going to take it and I'm going to spend it. So, or I think that you start early for some, at least having that little piggy bank, and then
Hmm.
so that's the little savings that you put on the side for whatever you're saving
Right.
up to do. And so, but to learn that investment part is a huge absent part of what,
Hmm.
and even savings. I think people need to understand really what savings is. So, can you
Right.
explain that what the difference between that little piggy bank and what the kind of savings that you were teaching that translates to all of us?
Yeah. So, the way that I like to, start off with, whether you're kids or whether you're an adult, is your purpose. Why do you want to do this? What's the goal? What are you trying to achieve? And whenever you have clarity of your purpose, then all else is pretty much simple. You're trying to get that Xbox. Well, you got to be disciplined and set that money aside. And whenever someone gives you some money for your birthday or for a holiday or you earn the money, that was another vocabulary word that I introduced. Earn it, no giving, earn. And that doesn't mean once you get that $10, you go spend it on you know, spend it on anything. You need to set it aside for the goal. So I went through a variety of ways of, explaining things to kids using song or, worksheets or handouts. But, the 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 simplest way I help them to understand the difference between saving and investing is that with investing, you can make money while you sleep. And so they're all like, no, you can't. I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because the idea of how you make money while you sleep is through compound interest. And so I go through this exercise with them and I say, I've had previous or context to lead up to this, of course. But I say, now this hand represents, got to get the right angle. This hand represents money. This hand represents interest. And so I get them in a collective circle and I say that compound interest is money that earns money on top of money. And I'm like, what's compound interest? Money that earns money on top of money. And we repeat that over and over, and we're all in a collective circle. And the younger kids, usually fourth and under, they get all into it and they're like, money, compound interest is money that earns money on top of money. And they have a ball, and then we all sit down. So those tactical and interactive exercises that I apply to help children understand some complex concepts in a very simple way.
Okay, so that's how you got your start because when you reached out to the school, they want you to start with the kindergartners and not middle school or even high school students. So over the years, I'm sure you've been able to break down those concepts to adults because many times we may feel that children we have to break it down for them, but adults should understand certain things, and they really.
Right.
And the problem with that is that some adults, instead of asking and saying, I really don't get this, they'll, it's that pride thing. Yeah, you expect me to know this, so I'm gonna act like I know it, and you just don't know
Right.
anything. So how do you talk to the adults? How do you get them interested in to understand that financial literacy?
Well, it starts with um, again just going back to the purpose and really helping them realize some harsh realities that if you don't do something, you're not going to have what you need to do to retire. And the harsh reality is that if you're 40 years old, making $50,000 a year, by the time you're 65, you're going to need approximately your income is going to accumulate based upon inflation to about 125,000. So, in order to maintain an income of 125,000 until your life expectancy, and since we're all exercising, eating healthy, drinking green juice or we're extending our lifespans. Assuming we're living to, let's say, 90, 95, then I ask people, how much do you think you would need to set aside? Well, a lot of people don't realize that it's about 2.3 million. The average American has less than 100,000 in their retirement plans. There's a huge gap between what people have and what people need to accumulate. So when I quote drop that bomb that you need 2.3 million, that's the wake up call. And usually when we're in our 40s, we begin to realize we're not too far away from retirement. So that's usually when adults begin to really get serious about planning and saving. Because the truth of the matter is that you would need to set aside $50,000 a year in order to get to that 2.3 million. And so it's like, well, how on earth is that possible if I'm making 50,000 and I have to save 50,000? And this is based upon the average income. So if you're making 100,000, the numbers pretty much work out the same. If you're making $250,000, the numbers pretty much work out the same. So the reality is that we have to begin to invest. And that doesn't necessarily mean in publicly traded companies, but that could be in real estate, or it could be in something you have an interest in, like, collectible art, but the point is that you have to begin to focus your attention on that. So what I do is I shed light. So I identify what your purpose is, identify, your drive and why you want to begin to save and invest. And then I also highlight the financial reality of why you need to save and invest. And then when I talk to people about what particular investment strategy would work best for them, then I break down things and I provide them with the necessary education to help them actually implement that. And from my experience, because I've been in the industry over 22 years, when that conversation is had and the action therefore follows, we get to the goal, because there's more than one way to achieve 2.3 million. That's the cash amount, right? So you can accumulate real estate and structure it in a way where you're receiving residual income, right? Where you're not having to partial that rental income from it to pay the mortgage, but you've structured it where you accelerate your ability to pay off the mortgage so that you can have more of that rental income coming to you to compensate for the income that you're going to need. So there's a variety of strategies that I suggest for people to make it happen. Even if you're 55, there is still ways to make it happen.
And that's really encouraging, because as you said, people don't get serious probably to their 40s, and then they're thinking, oh my goodness, it's so late. And then now that you say 55, at least I feel better because I'm past my 40s, but I'm under 55. So to be able to know that there is hope, that we don't just, when you drop the bomb, I'm going to have a heart attack, but I can't afford to die. So, get that for people to understand. And so we're going to go back to some things about other things, journeys and things that you've done. But I want to just talk right now, because you've been talking about the literacy in your company. So when I first saw the name of your company, Zeallionaire Enterprises, I thought about my oldest son, who years ago, he was like, I want to be a millionaire. And I remember going to Washington, D.C. for a meeting. And while I was there, I went to the bureau, to the mint where they make money. And so they had this box, and it was a millionaire starter kit. So I was all excited. I'm like, oh, my son is going to love this. So I got that millionaire starter kit. It had gigantic bills, but it added up to $1 million inside of it. And I got home and I gave it to him. He was a young adult in his early 20s. And he was like, thank you, Mom, but now I want to be a billionaire. So, what? I can't catch up. So at least your company is Zeallionaire, so he can be a zillionaire, You can just reach for the sky. So how did you come up with that name, Zeallionaire? I know that's just what it just brings up in
my. So a lot of people think I'm saying Zeallionaire, Z-I-L-L, but it's Z-E-A-L.
I did see that. That's the
Lionai.
deal, but
Right. So a zillionaire is a person that has identified their God-given talent and they are looking at ways to monetize it. So you don't have to already have money to be a zillionaire, but what you do have to do is to recognize your value. Recognize that you have value, you have purpose, and that purpose can be monetized. And monetized in a way where it's not, where your main focus is just greed. Oftentimes, when we think about wealth, we think about money, our context is based upon greedy folks and how we as African Americans or people of color have been beat down for the pursuit, of wealth. And so we're not trying to identify with that. But when you are understanding that you have value, you are here for a purpose, and based upon just the simplicity of using this tool that we call money for an exchange, just to make transfers and trades easy to exchange, and that you can now convert or transfer your talents, your gifts, your skills into this tool called money, which allows you to be able to enjoy the ultimate pleasures of life, being able to travel, being able to experience things with a level of freedom, and be a benefactor, be a philanthropist, give back. 9 out of 10 of my clients, 9 times out of 10, they all want to give back to the community in some form or fashion. And the ultimate optimal way to be able to give back is when you've got some money to give and you can put some plans together. You can build communities, you can build organizations that will end hunger, will end homelessness, will prevent transitional age youth from just being out there once they emancipate from the system at 18 and have resources available, for them. And it's not just one person that you help, but it's many people that you help, because you have built up a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar enterprise that now has a private foundation. And that private foundation will be under your control, not a nonprofit where you're getting government funding, where you're limited to whatever the government constrains you with. But in your private foundation, you have the liberty and freedom to say, well, this is how we're going to contribute and give back. And you define your rules because of the excess income that you derived from your business, which came from you, your talents, your skills. So that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate idea and what a zillionaire is, and the capability of all of us to be able to shift and change things in our society that we don't like.
all right, so that is very thought provoking for me as I sit here listening to you, because I do know a lot of people, like from my family, friends, my circle, different ones that I come across. They want to make that difference, and they have all kind of
Mm-hmm.
ideas of how you want to end the ills, or at least help alleviate some of the pressures of different ills, and wanting to build things and have
Right.
people talk about affordable housing. Gosh, I know if I could, I would just build complexes. I would do things, but have make it really nice where people feel like they really want to take care of it. And it's just a
Right.
lot of things, but money does limit us. But there's never
I
too
would
late.
change that. Money expands us.
Yeah, I mean, well, having it. I'm just saying the lack thereof
Yes.
limits us. That's what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I
so
know what you meant, but again, it's also being aware of what we're telling ourselves and how we think. you know and that's one of the things that I do every Wednesday on my Facebook Live, is to have conversations about wealth, because it's important to recognize how what conversations we're having, how we're thinking about it, and recognizing just where we are with that conversation, because we know what we want to get to. We know that we want to accumulate wealth, but the conversations that I hear people have is, well, I just want to make an extra $1,000 a month, or I just want to make an extra $100 a month, or I just want to get rid of debt, or I just want to pay off this bill. And we're not necessarily thinking about turning our annual income into our monthly income. And then we're also not paying attention to just some of the paradigms that we have as it relates to money. And so the more ways in which we're able to shed light and recognize, okay, so what conversations am I having with myself and people around me as it relates to resources, finances, this tool, this money game, then it helps to encourage people to think differently.
Okay, so before we transition, I want to just make sure that people have access to, now that you mentioned that you have a Facebook Live every Wednesday. So where can people tune in to see that?
Yes, so on every Wednesday on my right now it's on my personal page at Melanie Denise Perry. I have a conversation about wealth. I typically have a guest or it's just me. So it just depends on the theme of that month or that week on what particular topic subject I'll speak about. But it's wealth, it's money.
Okay, what do you have
Every
that
Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I forgot to say
at?
at 3 o'clock
That would be 3
at
p.m.
3 p.m.
At 3 a.m.
Pacific Standard Time. Right.
Okay. All right. So we'll note that to make sure that people have that. But before we get off the line, I really want to just talk to you real quickly about a couple of tools that you've created to inspire financial literacy through your book. So tell me about your two books, right? You've done two books.
Yes.
So let's talk about the first one that you wrote and how you were inspired by that, the name of it, and what it's about.
Right. So the first one is all about the Benjamins, helping people create sustainable wealth in the midst of financial insanity. And I wrote that book during the crash of 2008. And that's what inspired me because I had been in the industry at that point now 10 years. And there were so many conversations about wealth that there was a huge piece missing, which was that spiritual and cultural component. And so while we can understand the practical things, we need to save, we need to invest, I mean, that's not mind boggling. But why aren't certain demographics, certain people not doing that? And so what I could see in the group of people that I worked with, which are folks that look like me, is that whole resistance of the greedy perspective of wealth and the hoarding where people have tons of homes, tons of cars, and they're just themselves or a couple and all this. It was just not appealing, right? If that's what wealth is supposed to be and that's not what I want to be, then there's a rejection towards wealth. So I explain how spiritually grounded people are designed and deserve wealth. They deserve to be wealthy because spiritually grounded people are wealth in and of itself. You have talents, you have skills, you have unique, capabilities that God specifically planted in you. And so as humans, we just translate that into, again, this tool called money. And so to help us understand again that it's just a tool. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just a tool to allow us to do things in this world and to also break down culturally how we have experienced wealth and to not dismiss the effects of slavery, but to shift it in a way where we can now I don't want to say take advantage of it, but to be in the position to use the capitalistic model for good, for our purposes, for what we intend. And it's the person that's using the resources, not the resource itself, that results in something good or something bad.
Right. And it's when the resource is used. See, the thing in the scripture, it talks about the love of money. This is so that's what people are, resisting or withdrawing from because they're seeing what the love of money does and how that gets you carried away. And so, but it also talks about money answers all things. So there is, it's just to have that balance, to be able to have that balance in there, to know that you can use it as a tool, as you said. So if you're using it, but the money's not using you, then you can do a lot with it if you know what to do with it.
Indeed.
So let's talk about your second book that you wrote. So when did you write that, and how did
Yeah.
you do that
So
one?
the second book was written after the first. I'm trying to remember what date that was.
That's
I
okay.
don't.
But what inspired you to go ahead and write the second book?
Well, I was inspired because at that time, when I was promoting the first one, the parents were like, "Well, do you have something for kids?" And over time, I said, "Okay." Then I got the opportunity to teach at Marcus Garvey School, and as I was putting the curriculum together, I realized this could be a book. This could be a story. And how I began to teach at Marcus Garvey was trying to understand, how do kids learn? And people learn best through the art of storytelling. So I decided to put a book together as a part of the series to help children understand the process of wealth and how to accumulate it with integrity. So the name of the book is Jonathan and Geneva, The
Yeah.
Adventures of Zeallionaire Kids.
Okay, that's nice.
Yes.
So it's great that, many times we can speak at different places. You have the opportunity to speak. And while people may be inspired in that moment, to be able to have something tangible, to be able to look
Mm-hmm.
back at later on, and to be able to, really help to jog those memories, and to be able to help be able to start to take those first steps. So
Right.
I know that our conversation is not, it's just not simply not long enough today, because I have so many more questions, but I'm so grateful for the time that we've had today. And I am personally inspired. I've talked to some financial literacy people in recent months. And so everyone have their own focus. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad today to be able to hear something different, to be able to bring really an additional level of good news to the people, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what this is all about, being able to bring positive news that's going to impact our lives, that's going to change our lives right now. And I know many
Yes.
people are tired of just doing the same thing and in the same rut. And what are they going to do from here? Where are they going to
Right.
go from here? And so, in knowing that, okay, I can't keep putting this off. I need to do something about my future. And so, or
Mm-hmm.
about my children's future, and about making sure that my children's children, have a good future ahead of them. So I want to put up your information at the end, so I make sure that we put up that at the end, how people can get in touch with you for your services
Okay.
with Billionaire Enterprises, as well as your books. How can they contact you to get copies of the books for themselves, so that they can begin this journey for themselves? So, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we end today?
Well, I want to thank you for having me. I always enjoy the opportunity to shed light about money from a different perspective, have a different conversation about it, and to empower people to recognize that we all have something unique to provide and give. And it's not too late. It's never too late. Unless you're 89 years old, then I got to say, well, I hope you got some family. But, it's never too late to make a new beginning.
And based on your book, I would say it's never too early to start.
That's right. That's right.
So
Thank
thank
you
you
for that.
again for joining me today on Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, because your voice does matter and it's making a difference continually, even in the written print. So I really appreciate that. And I enjoyed talking to you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Miss Melanie Perry, for joining us today and sharing how your voice is truly making a difference and impacting our world positively for not only youth, but also adults in financial literacy. Now, if you'd like more information about how to get in touch with Miss Melanie Perry, please see the information on the screen below. If you're also interested in getting one of her books, you can go to Amazon.com. Now, her books are all about the Benjamins, helping people create sustainable wealth in the midst of financial insanity. That's for the adults. And if you'd like to get a book for your young people to learn about financial literacy early on, you can get her book, Jonathan and Geneva, The Adventures of the Zeallionaire Kids. So at this time, if you've enjoyed our programming today, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young. And until next time, remember, your voice matters. If you have something positive to share and you would like your voice to be highlighted on Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, please contact me at yvmwithnancy@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed this programming, please hit the subscribe button right now. Thank you.